Dr. Lisa Hammond had been waiting for this day for almost 3 years. Standing behind the thick glass window of the observation room, she watched her team make final preparations in the lab below. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting long shadows across the medical equipment that lined the walls. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the clipboard containing months of planning, approvals, and hope. The research facility at the medical center was quiet that morning. Most of the staff hadn't arrived yet, but Lisa's team had been there since dawn. They were about to begin something that could change everything they knew about chronic pain treatment. For years, Lisa had studied how the brain processes pain signals, searching for a way to help people who suffered every single day with conditions that traditional medicine couldn't fix. The experiment they were about to conduct involved a revolutionary brain-computer interface. It wasn't surgery, nothing invasive like that. Instead, it used carefully placed sensors that could read brain activity and send gentle signals back, teaching the nervous system to process pain differently. Think of it like retraining your brain, the same way you might learn a new skill or break an old habit. But here's the thing about groundbreaking medical research. You can test things in laboratories, you can run computer simulations, you can try it on animals, but eventually, if you want to help real people, you need a real person to volunteer. You need someone brave enough to be the first. That's where Rachel Torres came in. She was 34 years old, a middle school teacher who loved her job but had been struggling with severe migraines for more than 10 years. Imagine waking up and not knowing if today would be a good day or if the pain would hit so hard you couldn't even open your eyes. That was Rachel's life. She'd tried everything. Medications that made her feel foggy and sick. Alternative therapies that emptied her bank account. Special diets that didn't make any difference. Nothing worked for long. When Rachel heard about Dr. Hammond's study through her neurologist, she didn't hesitate. She called the research center the same day. During her first visit, she sat in Lisa's office and said something that stuck with the doctor ever since. "I've learned to live with pain," Rachel had explained, her voice steady but tired. "But I don't want to just survive anymore. I want to actually live." Lisa had explained everything about the procedure during that first meeting. The consent forms were thick, full of medical terms and legal language, but Lisa broke it down in simple words. Rachel would need to sit still for 6 hours while wearing a special cap covered in electrodes. These electrodes would be attached to specific points on her scalp, reading her brain's activity and sending back carefully calibrated signals. It wouldn't be comfortable, Lisa had warned her honestly. The electrodes needed firm contact with the skin, and sitting in one position for that long would be challenging. "Will it hurt?" Rachel had asked. Lisa had chosen her words carefully. "You'll feel pressure. Some people report tingling sensations. There might be some irritation where the electrodes touch your skin, but we'll be monitoring you constantly, and we can adjust things if needed." Rachel had signed the consent forms after reading them twice. She brought her younger sister, Nina, to be with her on the day of the procedure. Nina was a nurse at a different hospital, so she understood medical procedures better than most family members would. That gave everyone some comfort. On the morning of the experiment, Rachel arrived at 7 o'clock sharp. She wore comfortable clothes like they'd instructed, and had pulled her long dark hair into a ponytail. Nina carried a bag with snacks, a book, and a phone charger, prepared for the long day ahead. In the waiting room, Rachel was quiet but calm. She'd taught 3 classes the day before, knowing she'd need to take at least 2 days off work for the experiment and recovery. The preparation took almost an hour. A technician named James carefully measured Rachel's head, marking specific points with a washable pen. Each mark represented a location where an electrode would be placed, corresponding to areas of the brain involved in pain processing. Another team member, Dr. Patel, explained each step as they worked, his voice gentle and reassuring. "You're going to feel the gel first," he said as they began attaching the electrodes. "It's cool, kind of sticky. That helps the sensors pick up the electrical signals from your brain." Rachel nodded, trying not to think about the next 6 hours. Nina sat nearby, offering encouraging smiles whenever their eyes met. In the observation room, Dr. Hammond watched the monitors spring to life as each electrode connected. Waves of brain activity appeared on the screens, color-coded patterns that showed how Rachel's brain was functioning at rest. It was beautiful in a strange way, seeing thoughts and sensations translated into visual data. "Everything looks good," James reported through the intercom. "We're ready to begin the calibration phase." Lisa took a deep breath. This was it. 3 years of research, countless grant applications, endless meetings with ethics committees, and here they were. One volunteer, one chance to prove this technology could work. Rachel, can you hear me okay? Lisa spoke into the microphone. Yes, I can hear you fine. Rachel's voice came back, slightly muffled by the cap of electrodes. We're about to start. Remember, the first phase is just calibration. The system needs to learn your brain's unique patterns. You might not feel much at all during this part. Just try to stay relaxed and let us know if anything feels wrong. Okay? Okay, I'm ready. Lisa nodded to her team and someone pressed a button on the main console. The experiment had officially begun. The clock on the wall read 7:45 in the morning. 6 hours from now, they would know if years of work had been worth it. 6 hours from now, they might have the key to helping thousands of people who suffered from chronic pain. But right now, in this moment, all Lisa could think about was the woman sitting in that chair, trusting them completely with her well-being. The weight of that trust felt heavier than any research pressure or career ambition. Rachel wasn't just a test subject or a data point. She was a real person who had placed her hope in their hands. The first hour went by smoothly, almost too smoothly. Rachel sat perfectly still in the specialized chair, her eyes closed, breathing steady. The monitors showed her brain activity responding exactly as the computer models had predicted. Different regions lit up in coordinated patterns, and the system was learning, adapting to her unique neural signature. Dr. Hammond kept detailed notes, recording every change, every measurement. Beside her, Dr. Michael Torres, her research partner for the past 5 years, monitored the electrical output levels. They'd worked together on this project from the very beginning, sharing late nights in the lab and frustrating meetings with funding committees. Michael was the technical genius behind the interface design, while Lisa brought the neurological expertise. Neural feedback integration at 62%, Michael announced, his eyes scanning multiple screens at once. Better than we expected at this stage. Lisa allowed herself a small smile. Maybe this would work. Maybe they really had figured it out. In the lab room, Nina had pulled her chair closer to where Rachel sat. She'd been watching her sister carefully, noticing every small change in expression. As a nurse, she knew how to read subtle signs of distress that others might miss. So far, Rachel seemed okay. Uncomfortable, certainly, but handling it well. Around the 90-minute mark, Rachel shifted slightly in her chair. You doing okay? Nina asked immediately. Yeah, just getting a little stiff, and my scalp is starting to feel weird, kind of prickly. Nina glanced up at the observation window and gave a small wave to indicate Rachel had spoken. Through the intercom, Dr. Hammond's voice came through. Rachel, we heard that. Some tingling sensation is completely normal. It means the electrodes are working properly. Can you describe it on a scale of 1 to 10? With 1 being barely noticeable and 10 being very uncomfortable? Rachel thought for a moment. Maybe a 3? It's there, but not bad. Perfect. That's right where we want it to be. You're doing great. The calibration phase continued. The system was building a detailed map of how Rachel's brain processed sensory information, particularly pain signals. Every person's brain is wired slightly differently, like how everyone's fingerprints are unique. The machine needed to understand Rachel's specific patterns before it could begin the actual treatment phase. By the second hour, the data flowing across the screens had become incredibly complex. Numbers, graphs, and 3-dimensional brain models rotated slowly, showing real-time neural activity. If this worked, if they could prove that this technology could retrain pain pathways, it would revolutionize treatment for millions of people worldwide. But then something changed. At 2 hours and 17 minutes into the procedure, Dr. Patel, who had been checking Rachel's vital signs every 15 minutes, noticed something. He leaned closer to examine the area around one of the electrodes. The skin looked slightly red, more than he'd seen before. Dr. Hammond, he said quietly into his headset, we have some redness developing at electrode site 7. Lisa immediately shifted her attention to the video feed that showed a close-up of Rachel's scalp. He was right. The skin around that electrode had definitely become more inflamed than the others. Is it within normal parameters? She asked, though she could see the answer herself. Borderline, Michael said, pulling up the protocol guidelines on another screen. The Ethical Review Board specified that first-degree redness is acceptable during the procedure. This looks like it might be approaching that limit. Lisa's stomach tightened. This was the nightmare scenario they'd planned for but hoped would never happen. The experiment needed the full 6 hours to collect meaningful data. The system was still in its learning phase. If they stopped now, they'd lose everything. They couldn't just pause and resume later, because the brain state would be completely different. It would be like trying to finish a conversation days after starting it. The context would be lost, but Rachel's comfort mattered more than data. That was the whole point of the ethics protocols. The person always came first. Rachel, Lisa spoke into the microphone, keeping her voice calm and professional. How is your scalp feeling now? Any changes from before? There was a pause. Through the video feed, Lisa could see Rachel's eyebrows draw together slightly. It's gotten warmer, Rachel said slowly. Like when you touch something too hot but not quite burning hot. Does that make sense? It does. That's helpful information. Is it painful or just uncomfortable? Another pause, longer this time. It's starting to cross from uncomfortable into actually hurting, Rachel admitted, especially on the left side. Nina immediately stood up and looked more closely at her sister. The concern was clear on her face. In the observation room, Lisa and Michael exchanged glances. They both knew what the protocol said. They also both knew what this data meant. The readings they were getting from Rachel's brain were extraordinary. Her neural patterns were responding to the feedback in ways that suggested the treatment might actually be more effective than they'd hoped. If they could just complete the full session, they might have enough data to move forward with FDA approval. How much longer? Rachel's voice came through the speaker again, and this time there was a slight edge to it that hadn't been there before. Lisa checked the timer. 3 hours and 43 minutes remained. We're at the 2 hour and 17-minute mark, she said carefully. The protocol calls for 6 hours total to complete the full treatment cycle. She could almost feel the weight of that information landing on Rachel. 4 more hours? Rachel's voice was quieter now. Yes, but Rachel, if you need to stop, we can stop. Your well-being is the priority here. Michael touched Lisa's arm and pointed to one of the monitors. The pain processing centers in Rachel's brain were actually showing signs of reduced activity. The treatment appeared to be working, even during this calibration phase. This was huge. This was exactly what they'd theorized but never been able to prove. Can you give me a few minutes to think? Rachel asked. Of course. Take all the time you need. In the lab room, Nina knelt beside her sister's chair. They spoke in low voices that the microphone didn't pick up clearly. Lisa watched them, trying to read their body language. Nina was clearly conflicted. As a medical professional, she understood the importance of the research. As a sister, she wanted to protect Rachel from any unnecessary discomfort. 5 minutes passed. Then Rachel spoke again. I want to continue, she said, her voice steadier now. I came here to do this and I want to see it through. But I need you to be honest with me. Will it get worse? Lisa closed her eyes for just a moment. Honesty. That was the foundation of everything. Dr. Hammond stood at the microphone, choosing her words with extreme care. Rachel deserved the truth, but the truth was complicated. I'll be completely honest with you, Lisa began. The redness you're experiencing might increase as we continue. The electrodes need to maintain contact with your scalp to work properly, and that sustained contact can cause irritation. We've applied a conductive gel that's designed to minimize this, but everyone's skin reacts differently. Through the video feed, she watched Rachel nod slowly, processing this information. That said, Lisa continued, we're monitoring you constantly. We have protocols in place. If anything goes beyond what we consider safe, we stop immediately. No questions asked. And Rachel, the choice is always yours. Even if you decide right now that you want to continue, you can change your mind at any point. Just say the word and we stop. Nina was still kneeling beside her sister, holding her hand. Lisa could see them exchange a look that held years of sisterly communication, the kind that didn't need words. What about the treatment? Rachel asked. If we stop now, does all this pain I've already gone through mean nothing? Michael leaned toward his microphone. If we stop before completing the full cycle, we won't have enough data to establish the treatment protocol. We'd need to start over with a new volunteer. But Rachel, that's not your burden to carry. You've already contributed valuable information. So someone else would have to go through this? Eventually, yes. When we found another volunteer willing to participate, the room fell silent. Everyone understood what Rachel was weighing. Her own immediate comfort versus the possibility of helping others in the future. It wasn't fair to put that choice on her shoulders, but there was no way around it. That was the reality of being the first. How bad can it get? Rachel's voice was small now. Tell me the worst-case scenario. Dr. Patel spoke up for the first time. Worst case, you could develop second-degree irritation at some of the electrode sites. That would mean some blistering. It's painful, and would take a few weeks to heal completely, but it wouldn't cause permanent damage. Your hair would cover any scarring. Lisa watched Rachel's face carefully. She saw the moment the reality of that possibility hit home. But we have safeguards, Lisa added quickly. We can apply a topical numbing agent to the areas that are most irritated. We can reduce the electrical current slightly. These adjustments might affect the data quality somewhat, but they'll help with your comfort. Would I still be helping, even with those adjustments? Yes, absolutely yes. The data would still be valuable. Rachel took a deep breath, held it, then slowly released it. Nina squeezed her hand. Okay, Rachel said finally. Let's continue, but please use that numbing stuff, and keep talking to me. I think staying distracted will help. Relief flooded through Lisa, mixed with a complicated knot of guilt and gratitude. We'll do exactly that. Dr. Patel is going to come in and apply the numbing agent now. It'll take just a few minutes. The next 15 minutes were careful and precise. Dr. Patel worked gently, applying the topical anesthetic to the areas showing the most redness. He moved with practiced efficiency, talking to Rachel in a calm voice the whole time, explaining what he was doing and why. This should start working in about 5 to 10 minutes, he said. You'll feel the skin go a little numb, kind of like when you go to the dentist. It might feel strange, but it won't hurt. Meanwhile, Michael made adjustments to the electrical current, reducing it by exactly 15%. Lisa had calculated that this was the maximum reduction they could make, while still maintaining the integrity of the experiment. It was a compromise, the kind that medical research often required. Perfect data or the well-being of the participant. They were trying to balance both. As the numbing agent began to take effect, Rachel visibly relaxed. Her shoulders, which had been tight with tension, dropped slightly. That's better, she said. I can still feel pressure, but that burning sensation is fading. Good, Lisa responded. That's exactly what we want to hear. Now, you mentioned wanting to stay distracted. What would help? Music? Would you like to talk? Can Nina read to me? She brought a book? Of course. So Nina began to read aloud from a novel she'd brought, some mystery thriller about a detective solving a cold case. Her voice was soothing and familiar, and it filled the lab with normalcy, something ordinary in the middle of this extraordinary situation. Rachel kept her eyes closed, focusing on her sister's words rather than the discomfort or the weight of the electrodes. The third hour passed more smoothly. The numbing agent was working, and the reduced electrical current seemed to prevent further irritation. On the monitors, Rachel's brain activity continued to show promising patterns. The pain processing regions were definitely responding to the neural feedback, creating new pathways, learning different responses. Lisa documented everything meticulously. Every adjustment, every measurement, every time Rachel reported how she was feeling. This information would be crucial not just for this study but for future protocols. They were learning in real time how to make this treatment safer and more effective. But then at 3 hours and 41 minutes, Rachel's voice cut through Nina's reading. It's starting to hurt again. The numbing agent was wearing off. Dr. Patel checked his notes. That's actually sooner than expected. Most topical anesthetics last longer than this. Can we apply more? Nina asked, setting down her book. Yes, but we need to be careful about the total dosage. Too much can have side effects. Lisa made a quick calculation. They were roughly halfway through the procedure. 2.5 more hours to go. They could apply another dose of the numbing agent, but that would only buy them another couple of hours at most. The last portion of the experiment would almost certainly involve some discomfort for Rachel. Rachel, Lisa said, we can apply more of the numbing medication, but I need to be upfront with you. It's probably going to wear off again before we finish. The last hour or so might be difficult. How difficult? I can't know for sure. It depends on how your skin continues to react. But based on what we're seeing now, it could be quite uncomfortable. Through the window, Lisa watched Rachel's face. She looked tired already, and they weren't even at the halfway point yet. The reality of sitting still for 6 hours, dealing with increasing discomfort, was taking its toll. What are the numbers showing? Rachel asked, surprising everyone. Is the treatment working? Michael glanced at Lisa, who nodded permission for him to share. The preliminary data is remarkable, Michael said honestly. Your brain is responding to the neural feedback better than we'd hoped. We're seeing measurable changes in how your pain centers are processing signals. If these patterns hold, this could be a genuine breakthrough. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Nina had moved closer again, concern written across her face. Then we keep going, Rachel said firmly. Apply more of the numbing stuff. Keep monitoring me. But we finish this. I didn't come this far to stop when it's working. Lisa felt her throat tighten with emotion. Rachel's courage was extraordinary, but it also made the responsibility feel even heavier. They were asking so much of this one person. The second application of numbing medication bought them time, but everyone in the observation room could sense the situation becoming more precarious. Dr. Hammond had increased the monitoring frequency, checking Rachel's condition every 10 minutes instead of every 15. The video feeds showed the electrode sites in detail, and while most were holding steady, a few areas continued to show increasing redness. By the 4-hour mark, Rachel had stopped asking Nina to read. She needed to focus entirely on managing her discomfort. Her breathing had become more deliberate, the kind of controlled breathing people use when they're trying to work through pain. In through the nose, hold for a count of 4, out through the mouth. Nina coached her through it, using techniques she'd learned working with patients. You're doing amazing, Nina kept saying. Just focus on my voice. Focus on breathing. In the observation room, the mood had shifted. What started as excitement and hope had transformed into something heavier. Michael kept glancing at Lisa, silently questioning whether they should stop. But Lisa watched the data streams with intense concentration. The treatment was working. Rachel's brain patterns showed clear evidence of neuroplastic changes, exactly what they'd theorized would happen. Pain pathways were being reorganized, rewired. This was the breakthrough they'd spent years searching for, but at what cost? Dr. Hammond, Dr. Patel's voice came through the intercom, quiet but urgent. We have progression to second-degree irritation at Site 7 and Site 12. Lisa's stomach dropped. Second degree meant blistering. It meant Rachel was developing actual burns from the sustained contact and electrical current. They were still within the parameters approved by the ethics board, technically, but they were at the absolute edge of what was considered acceptable. Rachel, Lisa said into the microphone, her voice steady despite the turmoil she felt inside. I need you to be very honest with me right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, where is your pain level? There was a pause that felt like an eternity. 7. Rachel said, and even that single word sounded strained, maybe pushing toward 8. That's significant pain, Lisa said. Rachel, we need to talk about stopping. No. The response came immediately, almost fierce. How much longer? Lisa checked the timer. 1 hour and 53 minutes remained. Less than 2 hours. They were so close to completing the full protocol. Under 2 hours, she answered. I can do 2 hours. People run marathons. People give birth. I can sit here for 2 more hours. Nina spoke up, her voice tight with emotion. Rachel, this isn't about being tough. Nobody thinks you're weak if you stop. I know that. But Nina, this is working. They said it's working. When has anything ever worked for my migraines? When? Nina didn't have an answer for that. They'd both lived through years of failed treatments. Expensive appointments with specialists who had no answers. Watching Rachel miss important life events because the pain was too severe. Michael pulled up additional data on one of the monitors. Lisa, look at this, he said quietly. Her theta wave patterns in the anterior cingulate cortex. The changes are profound. Lisa studied the brain scan images. He was right. The anterior cingulate cortex was a key region involved in pain perception and emotional responses to pain. Rachel's brain was literally being retrained right before their eyes. These changes could mean real, lasting relief from her chronic migraines. But she was suffering right now, in this moment, for those future benefits. We can reduce the current more, Lisa said. Another 10% reduction. It'll extend the treatment time we need for full effectiveness, but it might help with the discomfort. Do we have time for that? Rachel asked. I thought you said we needed 6 hours exactly. We do, ideally. But I'm more concerned about you than about perfect data. Don't be. Rachel's voice had an edge now, almost angry. Don't waste what I'm going through by compromising the data. If I'm doing this, we're doing it right. Just tell me something to help me get through it. Lisa felt something crack in her chest. This was the impossible situation that ethics committees worried about. When does determination become coercion? When does a participant's desire to help others cross the line into self-harm? Was Rachel truly making a free choice? Or was she feeling trapped by the weight of what she'd already endured? By the promise of helping future patients? By not wanting to disappoint the research team? Rachel, Lisa began carefully, I want you to know something, and I need you to really hear me. You have already contributed enormously to this research. Even if we stop right now, what we've learned from you is invaluable. You've done enough, more than enough. The decision to continue shouldn't be about proving anything to us or to yourself. It should only be about what you can safely handle. What does safely mean? Rachel asked. Because Dr. Patel said second-degree irritation won't cause permanent damage. So it's safe technically. It just hurts. Dr. Patel looked uncomfortable. That's true in terms of physical safety, but pain itself is. Pain is what I live with every single day, Rachel interrupted. Do you know what it's like to wake up and immediately feel that pressure building behind your eyes? To plan your life around whether or not the pain will let you function? To turn down opportunities, cancel plans, disappoint people, all because of pain. I'm so tired of pain controlling my life. If I can sit here for 2 more hours and maybe possibly change that, then that's what I'm choosing. The room fell silent. Everyone heard not just Rachel's words, but the years of frustration and desperation behind them. This wasn't about bravery or stubbornness. It was about a woman who had been robbed of so much by chronic pain that she was willing to endure more pain for a chance at freedom from it. Lisa made a decision. Okay, she said quietly. We continue. But with modifications. We're going to apply the maximum safe dose of topical anesthetic. We're going to adjust your position slightly to relieve some of the pressure, and we're going to monitor you even more closely. Every 5 minutes, I'm going to ask you to rate your pain. If it goes above 8, we stop. Non-negotiable. Agreed? Agreed, Rachel said. The next hour and 45 minutes were some of the longest in Lisa's career. Every 5 minutes, like clockwork, she asked the question. Pain level? And every 5 minutes, Rachel gave an answer. 7.5. 7. 7.5. 8. When it hit 8, Lisa almost stopped the procedure. But Rachel quickly added, It's not getting worse. It's just staying at 8. Nina stayed right beside her sister, holding her hand, offering water through a straw every 15 minutes, wiping sweat from Rachel's forehead. Dr. Patel hovered nearby, monitoring vital signs obsessively. Blood pressure elevated but not dangerous, heart rate increased but stable, temperature normal, and through it all the data kept flowing. Rachel's brain kept changing, adapting, learning. The neural pathways associated with chronic pain were being systematically retrained. If this worked, if the changes persisted after the procedure ended, Rachel might experience significant relief. Others like her might benefit from a treatment protocol developed from this data. With 30 minutes remaining, Rachel's voice came through the speaker, barely above a whisper. Talk to me about what happens next. After this, tell me what you hope this will lead to. Lisa welcomed the request. Giving Rachel something to focus on besides the pain was the least she could do. If the results hold up, Lisa began, her voice gentle, we'll develop a modified protocol. Probably shorter sessions, spread out over several days instead of one long one. Better pain management. More breaks. We'll learn from everything you're experiencing right now to make it easier for the next person. The final 30 minutes felt longer than the previous 5 hours combined. Rachel had gone quiet, all her energy focused on simply enduring. Nina had tears streaming down her face, though she tried to hide them whenever Rachel opened her eyes. Dr. Patel checked and rechecked the electrode sites, documenting the progression of irritation with photographs that would become part of the medical record. In the observation room, Dr. Hammond stood with her arms crossed tightly, every muscle tense. Michael had stopped looking at the data screens. Instead, he watched Rachel through the window, his expression troubled. They'd both known that medical research sometimes required sacrifice from volunteers, but knowing it intellectually was different from witnessing someone push through pain in real time. 15 minutes, Lisa announced. More for the team's benefit than Rachel's. Rachel didn't respond verbally, but she nodded slightly, a tiny movement that took visible effort. The monitoring equipment showed Rachel's stress responses elevated but not at dangerous levels. Her brain activity revealed something fascinating. The pain processing centers were actually showing signs of self-regulation now, attempting to moderate the pain signals on their own. It was as if the neural feedback training had already begun teaching her brain new ways to handle discomfort. This was exactly the neuroplasticity they'd hoped to stimulate. At 10 minutes remaining, Lisa found herself praying to a God she wasn't sure she believed in. Please let this be worth it. Please let Rachel benefit from what she's going through. Please don't let this be just another failed treatment that cost someone their comfort for nothing. The data suggested it wouldn't be for nothing. The changes they were observing were dramatic and unlikely to be temporary, but there were never guarantees in medical research. The brain was complex, still largely mysterious despite decades of study. What worked in controlled conditions sometimes failed in real-world application. 5 minutes, Michael called out. Nina leaned close to her sister. You're almost there. 5 more minutes. You can do anything for 5 minutes. Rachel's lips moved. 5 minutes, she repeated like a mantra. The final countdown began. 4 minutes. 3, 2. The team in the observation room gathered around the main console, everyone unconsciously holding their breath. At 1 minute, Dr. Patel positioned himself near the main power switch, ready to shut everything down the instant they hit the 6-hour mark. 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 seconds. The digital timer on the wall ticked down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Time, Dr. Patel announced, and immediately began disconnecting the electrodes. The careful process that had taken nearly an hour to set up was reversed in minutes. Each sensor was removed gently, revealing irritated, reddened skin beneath. At 2 sites, small blisters had indeed formed just as feared. Rachel slumped in the chair the moment the equipment was removed, her body finally able to relax after 6 hours of forced stillness. Nina immediately wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and Dr. Patel began applying treatment cream to the affected areas. You did it, Nina whispered. It's over. You did it. Lisa left the observation room and entered the lab itself, something she rarely did during active experiments. She approached Rachel's chair, kneeling down to look directly at her. Rachel, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you. That doesn't seem like nearly enough, but thank you. Rachel opened her eyes, and Lisa was struck by how exhausted she looked. But there was also something else there, something that looked like accomplishment. Did you get what you needed? Rachel asked. We did. More than we needed. The data is extraordinary. Then it was worth it. But even as Rachel said those words, Lisa wondered if they were true. Was any amount of scientific data worth the suffering she'd just witnessed? The question would haunt her for a long time. Over the following days and weeks, Rachel healed physically. The blisters scabbed over and eventually faded, leaving small scars hidden beneath her hair. The redness disappeared, but the psychological impact was more complicated. Rachel found herself having dreams about the experiment, waking up feeling phantom pressure on her scalp. She started seeing a therapist to process what she'd been through. The miraculous part was that the treatment actually worked. 3 weeks after the procedure, Rachel realized she'd gone 4 days without a migraine. Then a week. Then 2 weeks. The migraines didn't disappear entirely, but their frequency dropped dramatically, and when they did occur, they were less severe. For the first time in over a decade, Rachel could make plans without the constant fear that pain would force her to cancel. But during one therapy session, Rachel said something that captured the complexity of her experience. I'm grateful for the results. I really am. My life is so much better now. But I still remember lying there saying it hurt and having to continue anyway. Part of me felt like my pain in that moment didn't matter as much as some future benefit for people I'd never meet. And that feeling, that my present pain was less important, that's hard to shake. Her therapist encouraged her to share these feelings with the research team, so Rachel scheduled a meeting with Dr. Hammond, sitting in the same office where she'd signed the consent forms months earlier. Lisa listened as Rachel explained her complicated feelings, gratitude mixed with trauma, pride in her contribution mixed with anger about what she'd endured, relief from her migraines mixed with resentment about the process. I need you to know something, Lisa said when Rachel finished. The Medical Ethics Board reviewed the entire procedure. We followed all the approved protocols. Everything was by the book. But that doesn't make it right. Rules and protocols can sometimes miss the human element, the lived experience of the person in the chair. She paused, gathering her thoughts. You said it was hurting, and we asked you to continue. That was your choice, absolutely. But I wonder if the power dynamic, the weight of being the first volunteer, the desire not to disappoint us or waste what you'd already been through, if all of that meant your choice wasn't as free as it should have been. Medical research has a long history of prioritizing data over individuals. We try to avoid that, but I'm not sure we succeeded completely with you. Rachel was quiet for a moment. What will you do differently next time? Everything, Lisa said. We're redesigning the protocol from the ground up. Shorter sessions, better pain management, more breaks. But more than that, we're adding something new. A patient advocate, someone whose only job during the procedure is to protect the participant's immediate well-being. Not the research, not the data, just the person. Someone who can stop everything if needed, even if the rest of the team wants to continue. Will that slow down the research? Probably. But that's okay. Medical advancement shouldn't come at the cost of treating people like they're less important than the data they provide. Rachel nodded slowly. I'd like to help develop that advocate role. I think I have a unique perspective on what that person would need to watch for. And she did. Rachel became involved in the continuing research. Not as a test subject, but as a consultant on patient experience. When Dr. Hammond published the groundbreaking results, she included an unusual acknowledgement section that specifically addressed the ethical tensions of the study. She wrote about Rachel's experience openly, using it as a teaching moment for other researchers. The paper was accepted by a major medical journal and led to FDA approval for a modified version of the treatment. The new protocol incorporated everything they'd learned from Rachel's experience. Sessions were limited to 2 hours with mandatory breaks. Pain management was more aggressive from the start, and every study site was required to have a dedicated patient advocate present during all procedures. Dozens of people have since been treated using the protocol that emerged from Rachel's 6 hours in that chair. Their migraines, chronic headaches, and other pain conditions have improved. Some consider Rachel a pioneer, a hero of medical research. But Rachel herself has mixed feelings about that characterization. She agreed to speak at a medical ethics conference, sharing her story with researchers and doctors from around the world. Her speech concluded with words that resonated deeply with everyone in attendance. I don't regret participating in the study, she said. The results have changed my life, and knowing that others have been helped makes the experience meaningful. But I wish someone had really stopped and listened when I said it was hurting. Not just heard the words, but truly listened to what I was communicating. Medical research needs volunteers, and volunteers need to understand there will be discomfort. But we also need to remember that the person experiencing pain right now is just as important as the people who might benefit in the future. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Dr. Hammond keeps a photo on her desk from that conference. It shows her standing next to Rachel, both of them smiling. But when Lisa looks at it, she remembers not just the successful outcome, but the cost of getting there. She remembers the voice coming through the speaker. It's starting to hurt, and the weight of deciding whether to continue or stop. The experiment couldn't stop then, but it led to changes that ensure future experiments can stop, should stop, when participants need them to. Rachel's experience became a catalyst for better practices across the entire field of neural research. Sometimes the people who